Hi, I'm Frank Almond. I'm the concertmaster for the Milwaukee Symphony and also playing as a soloist this week with the orchestra. Two pieces on the program that I'm involved with as a soloist. One of them is quite familiar to any symphonic audience. The Bartok pieces are sort of the outlier, I think, on this program. There's kind of an interesting story behind these two pieces, which are called Two Portraits. Only one of them is written for solo violin and orchestra. The other is just a straight orchestra piece. The first movement is the solo violin piece with orchestra and wound up being the first movement of Bartok's first violin concerto, which was not published in his lifetime. For various reasons I'll get to in a second. The second piece, the second portrait, is actually a piece for orchestra. And the reason it's called Two Portraits is basically these two pieces had nothing to do with each other, but Bartok sort of manufactured a reason to put them together and to publish them in his lifetime. And the story behind, especially the first movement, is sort of intriguing and quite personal for Bartok. He was infatuated with a young violinist named Steffi Geyer and presented her with the beginnings of a violin concerto that I think he was just going to dedicate to her, and gave her the first movement, which she promptly informed him that she hated, and really also made it quite clear she didn't really want to have anything to do with him, and forbade him to actually even publish it while they were still alive. She did not want her name associated with any kind of concerto that Bartok was writing. Bartok turned around and came up with the idea of doing two portraits, quote unquote, pulled a piece that was originally for solo piano and arranged it for orchestra. It was actually one of the bagatelles that he had written. And he kind of crafted this two-movement piece that still had the solo violin movement to open with, which was very lyrical and kind of introspective, and then had this sort of bombastic second movement that was just for orchestra. And there's a lot of speculation that Bartok was sort of, in his own way, maybe presenting two sides of Steffi Geyer's character in the best way that he could, while still trying to respect her wishes. The other piece on the program is sort of a standard virtuoso warhorse for violin and piano, or violin and orchestra. Ravel's inimitable Tzigane. I think Tzigane is just this really, really brilliant mix of Ravel's kind of inexhaustible imagination in terms of instrumentation and color and orchestration, and the ability to mimic this kind of gypsy style without actually using any real gypsy tunes. All of the tunes in there were things that he thought up himself. There were no real traditional gypsy tunes. It starts with a very long solo violin cadenza with lots of fireworks, and the orchestra eventually comes in with a long harp cadenza, solo violin and harp, and then it kind of goes into this very episodic showpiece for the soloist and actually for the orchestra as well. Another kind of curious thing about Tzigane is that it was written originally in, I think, 1924 for violin and piano, or an instrument called luteal. And a luteal was sort of this slightly faddish instrument in the 20s that I think there were maybe 2 or 3 pieces written for it, and Ravel decided he would go that direction because it was such an interesting sound that came out of the piano. It was basically a piano with a lot of different kinds of technical, mechanical attachments onto it that had all kinds of colors and noises and cymbalum effects and But the instrument quickly fell out of favor, and there are some recordings out there with violin and luteal, but mostly you'll hear this piece with either violin and piano or violin and orchestra. And it's a lot of fun to play. It's a real showpiece for everybody, and you know, hopefully nobody gets hurt.